to hear everything's going on. All right. Good evening, everybody. How are y'all doing tonight?
Yeah, great.
All right, good. The second time was even better than the first time. Good. All right. My name is Representative Jamie Gragg, or just Jamie is fine. Thank you for coming out tonight. An informed voter is the best voter, if you ask me, so thank you for coming out. Amendment 5 is probably one of the most confusing things that I've ever seen come across the ballot. Learning all you can about it is the best thing. It's, as I always explain it, there are people that dream of numbers and that's their happy place, and there are people that have nightmares of numbers. That's my category. I'm a woodworker by trade, and so I am so thankful that there are people like Representative Ben Keathly that is more of their happy place, because they can make up the lack for people like me. Ben Keathly comes from the St. Louis County area. He is an attorney up there, and he'll tell you more about himself, so I'm not going to do all the introduction, but I have served with Representative Keathley for 4 years now. Phenomenal individual. And so he is just, he's been touring the state and having some discussions about Amendment 5. He knows a lot of the things that I just don't know, and a lot of the answers to the questions you have. So before we get started, just to let you guys know how this will kind of go tonight, we're going to let him get up and share about how Amendment 5 works and how it looks and kind of the basics and how how it's laid out. So hold your questions, because he may actually answer it during that part. So if you got them, hold them, and then he'll have a time for questions, because a question may kind of throw him off and he'll forget where he's at, type of thing. So, so if you can, hold those, and then ask all the questions you've got, okay? We are live streaming as well, so we'll have all the people on the live stream, and then that will also be online for days to come, so people can go back and watch this. So you can go back online as well, watch if there's something you forgot. You can go back onto, this will be on my Facebook page for my Jamie Gragg state representative page, so you can go back on and watch things for something you forgot between now and the election time. So any questions before we get started? None? Okay. I do know that this is a political thing, so hopefully this doesn't get heated. Nobody's jumping chairs and throwing chairs and things like that, so I don't think we will this much. So thank you again very, very much for coming tonight. With that, I'll give it to Representative Ben Keathly. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you, James. Appreciate that. Just really quick, and first off, this is one of the first times I've seen so many people in the state passionate and willing to throw chairs over tax policy. As someone who ran for office to do serious tax reform that I think our state is in desperate need of, and has been for a long time. I think a lot of states would benefit, but as we'll talk about, Missouri particularly has a lot of work to do on tax reform, from local tax to state taxes, all of it. I'm happy to see so many people engaging on this, but these are complicated issues in how we go about doing it. Really quick about me, Jamie basically gave the high level stuff. I'm Representative Ben Keathly. I came into the House at the same time as Representative Gragg. We're in the same class there, getting elected in 2022. I'm from West St. Louis County. Chesterfield, Missouri is my district. That's where I've grown up, spent almost my entire life is from there. I'm a lawyer. It's what I do outside the legislature. It's what I do a lot of times when I'm in the legislature. We're part-time legislators. It's set up that way because we are supposed to be real-world people. We are supposed to exist in the real world and be a part of that. And I think that's good. It also makes a lot of challenges, and it makes it difficult to have good people in office a lot of times because it's difficult to raise a family, difficult to have a career, difficult to do all the things that normal people do who can't always be worried about politics all the time and policy. Because you got to take care of your family, you got to take care of your job, you got to take care of business if you're busy being a regular person, and we all have to do that too. And I think it's good, but it also comes with that price that it's difficult to do that balancing. But I really appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to speak with you on this. Want to try to leave as much time as I can for questions, so I'm going to try to get right into it and make sure that I can kind of give some of the high-level stuff, and then I'm happy to talk about whatever on Amendment 5 that you all want clarity on, have questions on, want to know a little bit more about. I'm happy to get as deep into the numbers as I'm capable of going. I've spent quite a bit of time with it. But I'll do my best with that. If you all want to do that, some people, you know, I don't like I watch eyes gloss over at a certain point with numbers, and I'm more of a technical person, so I'll try my best not to nerd out on the numbers stuff, unless you want me to, then I'm happy to do it. But
Ben, if you don't mind, real quick, so we've got a few folks watching on the live stream. If they might hear you better, to see if they can hear you okay, or if I need to move closer for them to hear you.
Can you hear me okay on the live stream?
If anybody can comment to let me know if they can hear you okay.
Okay. Yeah, and if anyone, just comment if anyone on the live stream is having trouble hearing, needs any, we can just comment on there and we'll make the adjustments as we can on it.
Thank you.
So anyway, Amendment 5. I want to start out with why it's necessary, and I think you've probably heard the kind of high-level pitch, and it's absolutely true, but I want to get into my personal reasons for it. The idea that the Missouri's economy is largely stagnant. Now we're growing each year. Government revenue is going up, which means our economy is growing at the same time because we're not raising taxes, we're lowering taxes. In fact, over the last 12 years, the income tax rate in Missouri has gone from 6% to 4.7%. We've been cutting it steadily, but we run out of those cuts once we hit 4.5. That is the last cut that we're statutorily allowed to take, and then we're done cutting. But every year we have cut and reduced the income tax. What has happened to government revenue? It's gone up. And now that shouldn't be a surprise to conservatives, because conservatives understand the fundamental concept. You do not get more money out of the economy and away from the taxpayers by raising the rate and squeezing them harder. You get it by growing the base. You get it by making your economy a more attractive place to invest, a more attractive place to do business, a more attractive place for people to come to want to raise a family. And by having more people and people contributing at a higher level, the rate can be lower and you'll actually get more tax revenue out of it because you have more people contributing and more people contributing in a meaningful and significant way to it. That's an important thing to understand on how this works and why the necessity is for Amendment 5. We are stagnant right now. Missouri, while our economy is growing, it's not growing as fast as other states are growing. We have shrunk over the last 15, 20 years. We have shrunk in our share of national GDP. That means we are not holding up our end. As the country grows, Missouri is contributing less and less to the share of that growth. Everyone else is growing, and we're kind of just falling further behind in the pack. And when we look at the states that are growing, it's largely states without income tax. States like Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Wyoming, but also states like New Hampshire and Nevada, which aren't necessarily dark, deep red states with all these other policies, but even they are seeing significant amounts of growth, and they have no income tax. The other real pressure on Missouri for doing something like this is we have to respond to the very real trend that's happening is other states are noticing this as well. Tennessee and Texas are states that are very near to us. We compete with business. More money, more investment, more businesses, more jobs are flowing into those states right now. And a big reason is because they don't have income tax. But other states around us have taken notice of that too, and they're acting fast. Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas has gone on to an aggressive tax cutting plan, and she has outright stated the goal to eliminate Arkansas's income tax. Right now, she's already brought it under what Missouri's rate is. Oklahoma is on a path to zero. Mississippi has gone on a path to zero. Kentucky has a path outlined to go to zero. Iowa has talked about going to a path to zero, and more states around us are doing this. The states that do it and the states that do it sooner are reaping the benefit of all of this. Our economy is in a massive flux right now. The online world, the online economy is making it easier. Remote work is making it easier for companies to decide to do business in states that are more friendly to their investment and more friendly to their bottom line. And you are seeing it with companies, with people fleeing states like California and New York. And so far, Texas, Florida, Tennessee have been reaping the large benefit of that. Missouri could do that too, but these businesses aren't going to be in flux forever, and they'll go to the states that do it first. We will grow the economy, and we know that because we've already started cutting our income tax over the last 12 years, and we've been growing. Now, not as fast as other states, because we're getting passed up by states with lower income tax rates or no income tax rates that are growing faster than us. But we know we bring in more revenue, and we know the states that are doing it, they're growing even faster. The growth does happen And that bears out in every single state we look at that does that. So the growth numbers are real, and the need for Missouri to do it is real. And that is probably you've heard Governor Keogh talk about this. You've heard a lot of people in the Pro Amendment 5 talk about it, but I want to talk about my reasons because that's true. But quite frankly, at the end of the day, you all can move too. If Missouri doesn't have a good income tax policy, you can move to another state. You can choose to go somewhere. Why should we do this in Missouri? What else is in it? Does the economic growth benefit you? And it will. But think about the other consequences of getting rid of an income tax as well. The income tax to me is a moral travesty. It's morally wrong, income tax. It's the single biggest invasion of privacy that our state perpetuates every single year, and they perpetuate on every single one of us. Every single April, we fill out forms and the state government wants to know every dollar you made, every dollar you spent, every dollar you gave to charity, every dollar you tithed the church, every dollar you invested. They want to know it all. They make you fill it out all on a form, and if you get it wrong, you maybe go to jail. If a cop asked you those questions, they would need a search warrant. But the DOR gets to come in and make you do that automatically, every single one of us. It's the single biggest invasion of privacy that we have. Guess what they don't do in Tennessee or Texas? They don't fill out state income tax returns. We get rid of the income tax. We get rid of the income tax returns. We get rid of the single biggest invasion of privacy that that our state government is perpetuating on every single one of us every single year. The other thing we do by getting rid of the income tax right now is we put Missourians in control of their own tax burden. What does that mean? If you want to spend less taxes now, what are your options? How do you do that? You want to pay less taxes to the state of Missouri. Your choice right now is, well, make less money. You want a lower income tax burden? Make less money. What kind of a choice is that? No one's going to make that choice. And to the extent someone might be able to afford to make that choice, do we want them making that choice? When you tax things, you are punishing things. And when you punish things, you get less of it. When you tax cigarettes, less people smoke. When you tax gambling, less people gamble. When you tax, like states that have death taxes, have less people dying in their states. People have done these research. That's how extreme the taxing numbers are. When you tax something, you get less of it. And when you choose to tax productivity and labor and investment, you will get less of those in your state. And that's what's happening right now in Missouri. It is not a good choice, and it's certainly not a choice that we want people making, is to lower their tax burden by simply producing less or working less. We don't want Missourians making that choice. So what can you do to lower your tax burden? Well, right now you can make less money. If we get rid of the income tax and the state of Missouri goes to a consumption-based tax, it puts you in control of your tax burden. You may not be able to make the choice to make less money. You have a lot more control over what you spend. You can shop in a different county or a different town with a lower tax burden. You can decide to spend less money on stuff. You can buy used goods. You can buy the cheaper version of a product. You can go without and choose to save the money at all. Now, there are some things that everyone has to buy. There are some things but you ultimately have a lot more control in your consumption than you do in your income. And that means that taxes on consumption are tax burdens that you, as a taxpayer, get to control rather than some politician in Jeff City who's setting rates and deciding what we're going to deduct for what special interest group or what credit we're going to give based on what benefits someone who can hire a lobbyist versus someone who can't hire a lobbyist. Missourians should get to make those choices for themselves to the extent it's possible, not politicians. Income tax is squeezing you on one whole end, which means it leads to double, if not triple taxation. Every dollar you make is subject to taxation when you earn it and when you spend it. And if you're spending on something that isn't currently taxed under a sales tax, like for example, I'm a lawyer. I'm classified as a service, which means right now, under current Missouri law, per our Constitution, I don't have to pay sales tax. I have a constitutional protection. You know, the mom and pop grocer, the mom and pop, you know, the brick and mortar store that sells T-shirts, they don't get a break from the sales tax, but I, as a lawyer, I do get a break from the sales tax. I don't know what the difference is between lawyers and real estate agents versus people selling groceries and clothes and goods, other than one can hire lobbyists and one doesn't hire lobbyists. But one has a constitutional protection and one doesn't. Sales taxes are double taxation, triple taxation. You are getting taxed when you earn when you earn $1. You are getting taxed when you spent $1. And by the way, the person you spend the $1 with is turning around and paying a tax too. And that's probably getting passed on to you in embedded taxation. You don't see it in the same way when you pay sales tax. You see it as a line item on your receipt. What you don't see is the 4.7% surcharge that a lawyer has to put on there, or that they don't say is on there, but they know they're paying income tax at the end of the year. And they have to make sure they set their prices at a rate where they can afford to give their 4.7% to the state government every year as well. It all gets passed on in the ultimate pricing of things. And that's how you're getting double, if not triple tax. You're taxed when you make money. That same dollar is taxed when you earn it. It's taxed when you spend it. And it's taxed again when the person you spent it with has to earn it too. How do we stop a system of double taxation where the same dollar gets taxed over and over again? We'll cut out one end where you're squeezing. Right now you're getting squeezed at both ends, when you earn it and when you spend it. We can get rid of one side of that completely just by getting rid of the income tax. Let Missourians earn the entirety of their paycheck. Let them keep the whole paycheck and then wait for it to be spent before you tax it, and we cut out the system of double taxation. So when I say income tax, to me is a moral issue. I'm talking about invasion of privacy. I'm talking about the fact that your dollar, that the government thinks it has a right to your dollar multiple times through that dollar's life through your bank account. That's not right. This is not just about growing an economy. It's about freedom for everyday Missourians to make choices about their tax burden, to make choices about where they're going to spend the dollar, and whether they're allowed to save money tax-free. And that's ultimately stuff that's going to help the state. So what does Amendment 5 do to solve these problems? If we pass Amendment 5, what happens? One thing happens for sure. The General Assembly is constitutionally required to eliminate the income tax. And that's it. That's the only thing that is mandated by Amendment 5. The General Assembly shall pass laws that eliminate the income tax. Everything else that comes into through Amendment 5 is an authorization. Because the question is, okay, if we pass Amendment 5, we are going to a zero income tax rate. The question now becomes, how long is it going to take us to do that? And quite frankly, that's up to what we do as a state next. If we do nothing to change any other tax system, and that's an option. We can pass the trigger laws. They would basically be spending caps that the state government would be required to put on itself. We say, okay, we spent $15 billion on general revenue last year. We're not allowed to spend more than $15 billion plus a couple dollars next year. And if for everything we raise over that, that goes to fund an income tax cut. And we'll just cut it little by little through these revenue triggers, through spending caps that we put on ourselves and constraints. We can do that. It'll take 25 to 30 years. Most people who are voting for, who are working in our economy today, very few of them will ever actually realize the benefit of zero income tax, and all that growth that we talk about wanting to get on the other side will be a lot slower coming into our state, and other states around us may get there quicker than us. But we could do that. We could eliminate the income tax completely through just waiting for the economic growth to slowly happen, and it'll take 25 to 30 years. We could do it by cutting spending too. Well, let's just cut it, Let's talk about that for a second. Can we cut to get it? And I'll tell you, I'm one of the biggest hawks on the budget that you will find in Jeff City. I've voted no on the budget, probably more than just almost all of my colleagues on it. I think we are spending too much. But even I have to be honest about what the budget situation in Missouri is. Income tax is about $8 billion of our budget, and it all goes to general revenue. General revenue. If you know anything about the budget, the number that gets thrown out is Missouri's budget is about $50 billion. $50 billion is if you're including all the federal spending and all the constitutional obligated earmarked money that doesn't go through the General Assembly. It automatically goes to some state department. The amount of money that the General Assembly actually has the authority and discretion to spend on is about $14 billion. And $8 billion of that is the income tax. $8 billion of $14 billion. So what does cutting to eliminate the income tax look like? You could eliminate every single dollar in K through 12 education that we spend. Every single dollar. Every dollar from the state government that goes to a K through 12 program in Missouri, get rid of it. And get rid of all the money that goes to Mizzou and Missouri State and all higher education. You could close every single prison that our state runs. Every single one. I don't know what you do with the prisoners, but close every single prison. You could stop paying every single politician in the Capitol building who draws a paycheck. Just stop paying their paycheck. Do all of those things, and you will still be about $700, $800 million short of what you need to cut to make the room for eliminating income tax. There's a lot of work we can do and a lot of efficiencies we can find in our budget, and we must find. We are not getting to zero income tax by eliminating $8 billion from our general revenue fund. It is an impossible task to do that, because we are not going to close down every prison and let everyone walk free. We are not going to defund every dollar out of K through 12 education. We are not going to walk away from the investments in our public universities. We are not going to defund various different people's salaries. I mean, maybe some of that could happen, but we're not getting to $8 billion. And even if you did that, you would still be short. So I hope we cut. We can cut under Amendment 5, but cutting alone is not going to get us there. So what else can we do with revenue to try to make this not take 30 years, but also not have to cut every single one of these dollars? And the other answer is expand the tax base. Right now, about 3 million, 2.8, 3 million Missourians are paying in through the income tax system. That's $8 billion being borne by about 3 million Missourians. 40 million people travel to Missouri every year and largely purchase services, things that are sales tax exempt right now. We could spread that burden that right now is carried by about 3 million Missourians. And by the way, so people say, oh, the income tax is a tax on the rich. This deals with the highest tax rate. The highest tax rate in Missouri is 4.7%. You know how much you have to make in order to be at the top income tax bracket in Missouri? $9,000. $9,000 is the deduction. After that, you are at 4.7%, our top tax rate. 3 million Missourians right now are contributing $8 billion. That $8 billion could be spread out over the people who travel here and the tourists who come here too. That's 40 million people who could be paying in to that same pot of money. Growing the base can lead to a lot less tax burden on specific Missourians by going out to people who are traveling here and other people coming into that pool. It's spread out over a bigger population, that same burden. Amendment 5 requires revenue neutrality, which is one of the most important things of the bill. We cannot use any expanded base to grow revenue. We are stuck with the revenue we have right now. You can only replace dollar for dollar. Every dollar that would come in, if we were to expand, and again, it's an if. Amendment 5 doesn't do anything to the sales tax code. It does authorize us to close loopholes in the Constitution for things like lawyers, for things like CPAs and accountants. Services. If those things are all tax exempt right now because of the Constitution, the only way, and this is one of the reasons why Amendment 5 has to be unconstitutional. I've heard a lot of people say, well, why don't you just do it statutorily? We've gone from 6% to 4.7 statutorily. Just do it statutorily. We don't need to change the Constitution to do this. Sure, we could go to zero statutorily. We would have to do it through growth, or we would have to do it by being stuck by jacking up the sales tax rate on the things that are currently sales tax and not being able to expand it to other things. The services industry, things right now, we are charging sales tax on about 30% of our economy. 30%. 70% of our economy has become sales tax exempt because it's largely in the services sector. Every year, the services are growing and becoming a more and more bigger part of the piece of the pie. In fact, services are so much that do you know what the effective state sales tax rate would be if we could tax everything at the exact same rate on the sales tax side? Right now, the state sales tax rate is 4.225. If you treated everything the same, you didn't play favorites in the tax code, you didn't give people who could afford lobbyists special exemptions and treatment in the sales tax code, if you just treated everyone the same, which I'm a proponent of because You know, I don't think government should be picking winners and losers among industries and deciding we're going to show favoritism to this industry and give them a sales tax break. And this one, we don't care about this one, so they have to pay sales. We shouldn't be doing that. We don't like that. We don't want that as conservatives. If we treat everyone the same, the sales tax rate would actually go down from what it is right now. Because that's how much money, 70% of our economy is not getting captured by the sales tax system right now because it falls into a services exemption. What does paying services look like for you? Like, because I've seen people say, well, we're gonna, you know, in order to fund this, you have to jack up the sales tax rate to 15%, 20%. Those numbers are premised on the fact that we would just go after the things we currently tax, which is an incredibly inefficient way to go about it. We couldn't do that. We can't have a sales tax rate of 15% because all these states that are going to zero that we're trying to compete with for business, Tennessee's sales tax rate is 7%. Arkansas's is 6.5, Kansas is 6.5. The states around us all have about a 6.5 or 7% sales tax rate. We can't go over that or we'll lose all the growth we're trying to achieve. The goal shouldn't be, and it's not, to start putting 15 and 20% sales taxes. It's to stop giving special preferential treatment to certain industries at the expense of others. We should have one standard sales tax rate in Missouri, and no one should be treated differently or exempt from that under the Constitution. If we want to have those discussions in statute, and there are some industries that I think you can make a very good case for, should be treated differently. Mike Keogh has said he will not sign any expansion of a sales tax base that doesn't include exemptions for agricultural services, healthcare services, or real estate. By the way, those are three very easy promises to make because take healthcare, for example. Half of all healthcare, if we do an expanded sales tax base, half of all healthcare in Missouri spending is already exempt anyway because it's done under federal programs like Medicare and Medicaid. We can't tax that. The federal government says we can't. No matter what our Constitution says we can't. We can't tax business inputs. Most agricultural services are a business input, which means it's a business-to-business transaction that is exempt from sales tax right now under Missouri law and would continue to be so. Things when businesses buy one thing for developing something else in their business, that is a business-to-business exempt. It's not a final point of sale. It's not classified as sales tax, and therefore a lot of that would be exempt. And as for home sales, we can't tax home sales even on the other side of Amendment 5 because home sales aren't protected in Section 26. They're protected in Section 25 expressly and directly of the Constitution, and Amendment 5 does not touch Section 25. It's crazy to think about putting sales taxes on a $100,000, $200,000 purchase like a home. That has never been a part of an equation, and legally we wouldn't be able to do it. We are talking about taxing things like lawyers, CPAs, accountants, lawn care workers, contractors. Those are the services that is a major and growing part of our economy that right now is just completely not captured by sales tax. So I said if we gave no exemptions, we'd be at about a 4.2%. But we know we have to give some exemptions that will remain in place because the federal government says so, or other constitutional sections. But if we treat everything the same that we would be allowed to on the other side of Amendment 5, your sales tax rate would be about 4.9%. That's not an additional 4.9%. I'm not talking about putting 4.9% on top of the 4.2 that's already there. I'm saying it would go from 4.2 to 4.9%. Well, okay, Ben, doesn't that raise my sales tax? It raises your state sales tax. But you don't care what your state sales tax rate is. You care what your ultimate final sales tax rate is. At least I think you do. That's what I do. I know I don't 4.22%. I know I'm paying 8%. I know I'm paying 10% when I shop at this place. Sales tax limit, that's the local part that's coming in. Right now, you are paying roughly 4% to the state of Missouri. What is the sales tax rate about here in Ozark? 11? Okay, so 11% sales tax. 4% goes to the state, and roughly 7% goes to the local governments. What do you care if it's 4 and 7, or 4 and 6, or 5 and 6? If the state one goes up to 5, but the local goes down to 6, you're still at 11%. Your sales tax rate hasn't actually changed at all. How can Amendment 5 works like that and accomplishes that? And it's right there directly in the bill. How it does that is, just like the state is required to be revenue neutral, and if we were to get additional revenue from an expanded sales tax base, from taxing things that are currently exempt under our Constitution, if we close those loopholes and started getting that revenue, we have to give those back in income tax cuts to everyone. Well, the local governments are charging on those services too. They could start realizing the benefit of additional dollars too. Amendment 5 also requires them to not get revenue windfalls. Well, they don't have income taxes, so how do they make sure they're not getting revenue windfalls? They charge things like personal property taxes and real property taxes and sales taxes. And Amendment 5 requires that the local governments, when they get more revenue from the sales tax base, they have to bring down their other rates. That means Amendment 5 leads to the cut in the personal property tax rate, the real property tax rate, and their current sales tax rate, which means the effective sales tax rate goes down. Yes, there would be more things that aren't currently being taxed that then are getting taxed, but the rate actually stays the same, and in some places, your effective overall sales tax rate would actually go down from what it is today on the other side of passing Amendment 5. It's right there in the bill. It says that local governments who receive this benefit have to lower their personal property taxes. They have to lower their real property taxes. They have to lower their sales tax rates. The one thing I always tell people, and I usually start with this, but I just want to make sure I say it. I hope you'll listen to some of the things I'm saying, and I hope you're doing your own research. But the one thing, if you take one thing away from this, let it be this: read the bill for yourself. Don't listen to a news article. Don't listen to a special interest group that is currently benefiting off of the current system and the status quo. Don't listen to government bureaucrat associations that are benefiting off of the status quo. Read the bill. This is not a 100-page complicated Washington, D.C. omnibus. It is a 3-page bill. It is a 3-page bill of constitutional guardrails and accountability that we are putting on our politicians in Jeff City to make sure that they have to go about the elimination the right way. What are those guardrails? Revenue neutrality. They have a 5-year window to do it. And they are still subject to Hancock, by the way. They can't go raising, just like right now. If you want to raise the net taxes on the population, it requires a vote of the people. That stays in place. I have seen just outright lies out there that Amendment 5 suspends Hancock. It is not true. Hancock stays in effect. It doesn't go away. Hancock is still there. And anything we do to income tax would still be subject. I'll tell you what part of Hancock is affected is the part that right now currently says that Hancock has a big exemption in it that was put in 1996. And it's how they did the gas tax to all of it. Who remembers voting on the gas tax? We did vote on it. What happened when we voted on it? We failed it. And yet we got the gas tax anyway, and when we got it, they didn't let us vote on it, right? They did it all. How can that be? Hancock says if you want to raise taxes and get more revenue, you have to. Well, in 1996, they put an exemption that says, well, as long as you're revenue neutral and you're within $100 million or so, we're going to just call it revenue neutral, and it doesn't have to go to the voters. And what they did on the gas tax was they phased it in over several years, and they made sure in any single 1 year it was calculated to stay under $100 million. And they said, we're under the threshold in every single year. We don't have to follow Hancock. We don't have to go to the voters. What Amendment 5 does is it says it replaces that thing that's not working on that anyway, and it says we're replacing it with 100% revenue neutrality. We're not going to. You don't get the 100 million margin of error is not the standard for judging Amendment 5. The standard is revenue neutrality, and it creates its own separate, distinct standard. The rest of Hancock applies to Amendment 5 and to any taxes that would be considered after Amendment 5. The only thing that doesn't apply is that 100 million loophole that the gas tax leveraged to go in. So when people are saying, well, Hancock suspended, what they're doing is they're saying, oh, it refers to Hancock, and it says this particular provision of Hancock is that Amendment 5 is not subject to this provision of Hancock. Therefore, this is terrible. It doesn't listen to Hancock. look at what the provision is. The provision is this 1996 change to Hancock that instituted the $100 million margin for error that you're allowed to increase by without going to the voters. That's the part that doesn't apply to Amendment 5 because Amendment 5 has its own revenue neutrality requirement. So I just want to make that very clear because I think it's a very, very disingenuous point that some people have tried to make, or maybe not. Maybe it comes out of ignorance on it, but the fact that it suspends Hancock, Hancock remains in full effect. Hancock doesn't go away. Hancock still applies. If the General Assembly wants to do anything that will raise the net taxes and the net tax burden on Missourians, it still has to go to the voters. Amendment 5 does not do anything to raise any sales tax rate, and all the revenue neutrality requirements actually makes it very difficult, if not mathematically impossible, for sales taxes to really go up to any crazy amount. What it does is it says that the things that we have exempted in the Constitution and given all these loopholes to, those loopholes now are up for debate for the legislature to start talking about again. And we are capable and we are allowed to talk about treating every industry in Missouri the same from a sales tax perspective. I think I already talked about more. I hope some of you got some of the questions answered and everything I went through. But I do want to make sure we have enough time for questions. Jamie, what time do we have the room till?
Jim, what do we got the room till?
Whenever you're done.
Whenever we're done.
All right. Dangerous. You got to practice my filibuster skills. Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the misconceptions that I hear is, you know, I'm on a fixed income, I'm retired, I don't pay state income tax, so you're going to raise my taxes because now I'm going to be paying a higher state sales tax. And I think you touched on it, but it's that principle of embedded taxation.
Mm-hmm.
That can you expand on that a little bit more and kind of describe how a company's state income tax liability is an input cost just like it is labor and any kind of materials?
Yeah, and I'll say there are very few there are very few people who have no income tax burden. There are people who may not file income tax returns. That just means they're not getting their refund. That's all right. And there are people, and I've seen some numbers quoted on how many Missourians are paying income tax. It's a little like misleading because when you're looking at, there's 6 million Missourians and only this number. Well, yeah, children aren't paying income tax. Spouses are filing jointly. You know, for most married couples, you get one income tax return. But what the left constantly wants to do on this is they want to count up how many returns are filed every year compared to the whole population and say, look how many people don't have an income tax burden. Well, if you're married and and your spouse files the income tax return, one for both of you because you file jointly, does that mean you don't have an income tax burden? But I would also say all of us have an income tax burden. The question is whether you are directly writing the check or not. If you are shopping in Missouri, the person you are buying from, whether it's a good or a service, has to turn around and pay income tax. And the income tax rate is higher than the state sales tax rate. And I've used myself as an example. I'm a lawyer. I'm currently exempt from state sales taxes. I don't put a state sales tax line on my invoices to my clients. I don't have to do that. But like at the end of every year, every April, I know I have to write a check to the Department of Revenue. Like when push comes to shove, ask yourself this. Am I taking food off the table from my kids to make that 5% work? Or am I adjusting my prices at some point to do it? When my costs go up, that 5% is that 4.7% income tax rate is one of my costs. That's like an overhead. And you don't see it in the bill like you do on a sales tax, on a receipt for goods, sales tax. But that is absolutely a cost to that business owner that they're having to do. Sales taxes are more transparent. Income tax is not transparent because you just don't see it. Yeah.
So, I want to understand this correctly. You said the personal property tax, some of that gets sent back to the state.
Personal property taxes, no. That's
All right, then I
the state does
misunderstood.
not collect a personal property
No, I
tax.
know the county does.
Mm-hmm.
So, but none of that money goes back to the state, right?
The state does not get revenue off of the personal property
Doesn't
tax.
get any of that revenue off the personal property.
Yeah,
So
there's a small exception for things like the blind pension fund.
But
It's very
I'm
rare.
talking in general.
Okay.
So it's not going to be a lot of money. So
Right.
So
Pennies.
let's put that off the because I'm retired,
Mhm.
and based on his question, and I'm gonna be upfront with you.
Yeah.
Because you said a lot of stuff, okay? And I'm not saying that in a bad way, I'm just saying there's a lot to digest.
Yeah.
For somebody simple like me. And what I'm saying is, I'm retired, and based on his question, one of the things that I am afraid of is, and right now, I'm getting the property tax freeze and the, certain amount of money that because I only receive my Social Security. So instead of just flushing this down the toilet, all of the income tax, why can't you guys start small? And what I mean by that is, Social Security you're saying is not taxed. Unfortunately for me, and I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent, so bear with me. So unfortunately for me, I had to take some money out because I did a foolish thing. I bought another piece of property. Now when I did that, I ended up having to pay, my income went up. When my income went up, my IRMA is going to go up in the next couple of years because of Medicare. Why can't you guys eliminate any cap for seniors? That's the first question. The second thing that you touched on is businesses are going to certain states. Texas has an oil and gas economy. Florida has a touristy economy. Vegas is gambling, or Nevada is gambling. Nevada is unique because most of the state is not populated, so most of their tax base is based off of the gambling revenue. So that's clear. But I still haven't heard a plan. You're talking about $8 billion out of 13. That's what, 65%. How is that going to be replaced? You can't just get rid of it. So how is that going to be replaced? And you're talking about businesses going to Florida and Texas and so forth. Great. Why can't Missouri have a coalition to hit these certain businesses first in some of these blue states and say, hey, come to Missouri. We're gonna do tax deferred. We'll build you a campus. It doesn't have to be in St. Louis or Kansas City. And I know you're a Republican, as am I. I'm a conservative, but the point blank is St. Louis and Kansas City are heavily Democrat. So there's a lot of stuff going on in my mind, and I'm not going to be shy. Right now, I'm a solid no on 5. I'm going to tell you point blank. You've got, and unfortunately, the way I think, your gas tax analogy really kind of worked against your argument, because that means that somebody in Jefferson City found a way around that. And there's no way.
Yeah, and so I'm saying stick a different standard on it, which is what Amendment 5 does. Because the current standard that people are worried that Amendment 5 touches, which I'm saying that standard is broken. It's
right, and I agree.
Going right through. So let's fix that.
All I'm saying is let's crawl before we walk before we run. Instead of getting rid of all of the income tax right away, which is $8 billion.
Okay, sir, let me, do you have any other parts of the question?
I have a lot more stuff, but I'm not going to say it.
I'm going to start forgetting them is the only reason. I'm not trying to. So I'm going to try to get to each of them. Hopefully I remember each of them. Number 1, you said walk before you run. Why can't we do some things around the edges? We look at the seniors and caps. Like, we've done a lot around the edges. We have been walking. We've proven the concept. I talked about how we've gone from 6% to 4.7%. We've done a lot of cutting of the income tax. Also in that time, you know what else we've done? Particularly seniors have been some of the first benefactors of zero income tax. We have eliminated income tax on Social Security earnings. We have eliminated income tax on public pension earnings. And then last year we eliminated income tax on capital gains investment. Those are things that predominantly, if not exclusively, benefit the senior citizen community in Missouri. The one thing I would say to seniors who are realizing all that is just like the 4.7% for everyone else, and to the extent you're a public pension collector or Social Security earnings collector, and you've seen those income tax go to zero, they've all been done through tax credit schemes, which means they're not actual eliminations. They're tax credits that are offered so they can go straight back to collecting it, and they're all statutory. If you don't trust the politicians in Jeff City, one of the best things and an imperative thing for us to do is to constitutionally codify all of the zero work we've done, all of the tax cuts we've done already, by making it hardwired in the Constitution. Amendment 5 puts 0% in the Constitution, doesn't just leave it in statute for some bad politician to go raise it later down the road.
So here's the thing, and I appreciate that, I really do. But you're saying it went from what, 6 point something down to
6.0 to
down to
4.7.
4.7, right? So, okay, let's do this. Because you guys, based on what I'm seeing, and socially and everything what's going on in the country, we don't want that here. Is with the Democrats and the rise of this democratic social, whatever the hell they're calling it. Okay, so that's another battle that you're going to have to fight. The better you make it for the overall, for Missourians, better you got, not you personally, of course, but the better the politicians make it in Jefferson City for everybody. The difficult, and again, I'm not playing checkers, I'm playing chess. So it's going to be more difficult for the left to really get their foot in and try to convince everybody that that's the way to go. I know that's another conversation because I have my own thoughts on that, of course. But what I'm saying is, fine, instead of just lower to half a point. Because, okay, fine, lower to half a point. Raise that as a rallying point and say, look, this is what we did as your Republican legislature in Jefferson City representing all Missourians. This is what we did.
Every time we lower it, that is not protected. Amendment 5 does do it. It phases in these lowering one time. It's not doing it overnight.
Right.
But the point is, if you do it in the Constitution, every time we cut it, it is protected. If you just do it statutorily, just nickel and dime it half at a time, one, it's really difficult to get the growth. You said, why doesn't Missouri send a coalition to get these businesses that are thinking about moving? We do. We absolutely do go talk to these businesses and we try to market, but so does Florida, so does Tennessee, so does every other state. And when you have a package that includes, by the way, we don't charge income tax in our state, those states get to win out. The other thing you brought up, well, we're not Florida, we're not Texas, we're not Nevada, they have benefits that we don't have. Well, one, I'd say, okay, well, we are very much like Tennessee. At least we were 15, 20 years ago before Tennessee started passing us up. And they started passing up because they started being better on policy, regulatory policy, education policy, and yes, tax policy. But we very much, Tennessee has a lot of similarities to Missouri, at least it did 15 years ago. To the extent they don't now, it's because they passed us up. But also, even your Florida example, Missouri has more tourists per capita than the state of Florida does. To say, well, Florida can do it, but we can't because they have a tourism-based industry. Yeah, they have a tourism-based industry, and they have found ways in their tax system to tap into it. You know what we haven't done? We actually have more tourists when you control it for population. We have not tapped into it because we have them all shopping in tax-exempt services sectors, and we're not getting that revenue.
Let's start there.
Yes, that's exactly my point. We can't do it because right now we are constitutionally stopped. You have to vote for Amendment 5 for us to start there. We can't start doing the work because the Constitution blocks us from doing these things.
To tax the tourism industry?
Yeah, to tax services. To tax things that are classified as services. Section 26 of Article 10 of the Missouri Constitution says we can't. That's one of the things we are trying to fix in Amendment 5.
The problem with that is, once you open that gate to taxing services, all of our costs are going to go up because all of those costs are going to be passed on to the consumer. And that's one of the things I'm absolutely fearful.
Like it is on income tax right now. The average Missourian right now pays $1,500 of state income tax. The average Missourian, $1,500 of state income tax. Well, we talked about I said a 4.9% sales tax rate would replace all the revenue if applied evenly across the board, controlling for federally required exemptions. Your tax would be 4.9. Let's round it up to 5 to make the math easy. $1,500. $1,500 is 5% of $30,000. That means if you're the average Missourian who pays $1,500 in state income taxes right now, you would have to spend more than $30,000 a year on services, on lawyers. That's $30,000 a year on lawyers, lawn care workers, CPAs and accountants, massages. Those $30,000 a year is what you would have to spend before you came worse off because of your services getting taxed than you currently are paying under the income tax. If you have more, I do want to get to it.
I'm not going to I don't want
5 years, how you see that this will work? Are you going to start reducing income tax? Or do you do it all at once, or is that up to you guys to talk about, or?
It's the only thing that's required is we do have to put a trigger system in place. So basically what that looks like is we have to define revenue points, starting with what the revenue is right now. When we hit these revenue targets, instead of spending the money, we are required to lower the income tax rate accordingly to address it. So it effectively works. If you don't do anything to find somewhere else to get more revenue, if you don't grow the economy, if you don't expand the sales tax base, if you just sit there, then your revenue is just going to stay the same. You would just have to cut to fund those yourself. And that's why now growth will happen, because every time we lower the rate, the economy, the baseline of the economy does go up. But it goes up, the longer it takes you, the less those cuts are at any point, the slower it grows. Without expanding base, without finding new revenue, you would eventually get there, but it takes about 20 to 30 years to go.
So how do you see the sales tax increases starting, or how's that going to happen? Who decides?
Yeah. So it would become a topic of debate in the legislature whether or not the taxes go onto these services. Right now, I mean, the way it works right now is we have a state sales tax rate, and it applies. The law that sets the state sales tax rate applies across the board, and the legislature can move it up, and the legislature can move it down. Nothing is changing about that. If Amendment 5 fails, there's nothing stopping the legislature from trying to increase, other than the Hancock Amendment, which would stay in effect. But like we could cut income tax, call it revenue neutral, and then jack up the sales tax rate. But it wouldn't be worth doing right now under our current system, because while we set a sales tax rate, the Constitution, Article Section 26 comes in and then gives all these exemptions to all these services, which means we would be stuck raising the sales tax on 30% of the economy rather than 100% of the economy, which means that sucks if you're someone who sells shirts. If you sell toys, that's really rough. You know, I think the No on 5 people are running a commercial with a girl talking about, you're gonna tax my Barbie dolls? We tax Barbie dolls right now. There's no exemption for Barbie dolls. And so it's things like that, the things you currently pay sales tax on, would get an even higher rate stuck on them. And by the way, that's bad for lower income and middle income people, because sales taxes are regressive. Sales taxes on goods are regressive. Sales taxes on services are purchased more by wealthier people at wealthier income levels. The wealthier people have more needs of lawyers and CPAs, accountants. They buy more contractors. They spend more money on landscaping and lawn care work. And all the things we associate with services are much more bought there. And meanwhile, lower income folks spend more of their income on goods, on groceries, on clothing, on actual tangible items that they're leaving the store with. Which means we don't want to, like, that is actually the bad way. That would be the harmful way to go about it. If we don't close the loopholes, your choice, I don't think it's a real choice, and I think very few politicians would be able to stay in office if they decided to start taxing Barbie dolls at 15 and 20%, or you know, the clothes people have to buy. What is a fair way to go about it is to close the Section 26 loopholes and say, you know what, we're not going to pick winners and losers. We're going to treat all industries the same, unless they can show there's a good reason for it.
For instance, like daycare, a young family that has 2 kids in daycare, are they they'll probably start paying tax on?
If the legislature could be convinced to put a sales tax on daycare.
So they wouldn't have to. You don't have to go across the board.
You don't know. It allows the conversation to happen. Right now, we're not allowed to have the conversation. And that's what I think is important to this point. It's like, well, why don't you guys just start doing some of that work now, closing these loopholes? And the answer is we can't, because the Constitution says we can't. Yeah.
So in that example, then, can the state elect to add a sales tax like that type of service, but the county or the city not, and just have their own separate tax to make up for what it is? Or do they have to combine those with the county and city taxes that are already being?
Yeah, I mean, it would. You could conceivably, legally. I don't think you could just say the state is going to levy the sales tax on these services, but whatever services are decided to not be exempt anymore, but we're not gonna let the local governments do that. You could do that, and maybe you could do that, pick and choose services. The problem with that then is then you're not getting the personal property tax cuts, you're not getting the lowered sales tax rate on the local end, which means the numbers start getting away from you a little bit more then. If you ask, if everyone is going to have a different list of what kind of services they think should be tax exempt and what shouldn't, and that's fine, we should have those discussions, we should have those debates. Period. We should have those debates. Right now, we can't even have those debates. If a special interest group bought a loophole in the Constitution at some point in the last 12 years, they just have it. They don't have to justify it they don't have to justify it any longer to the voters. They don't have to defend it in the Capitol. They don't have to. Their loophole is just there and protected because of Section 26.
So you mentioned that we would have to vote on it if we wanted to raise any more sales taxes, but you said that there's
If it raises the tax burden, which is how it works right now.
Okay.
Revenue neutral tax proposals, even right now, this has nothing to do with passing Amendment 5 or failing Amendment 5. That's just the way Hancock works. If it's not a net increase, it doesn't go to the voters.
meaning like county taxes as well.
All of it, whether it's state, county, local, school district. And that's why you have all these tax proposals on your ballot, because they're trying to get more revenue from you. If it appears on your ballot, if they're asking you about a bond issue, if they're asking you about that, they're not doing that because they want your opinion. They're doing that because Hancock says they're getting more revenue, so they are required legally to ask the voters if it's okay to get more revenue. They need your permission to get it. And it would continue to work that way. Amendment 5 only addresses revenue neutral proposals. It puts its own standard of revenue neutrality on it. And it says you cannot, under Amendment 5, if you are going to expand the sales tax based on services, it can only be done revenue neutrally. You actually can't do it with a vote of the people. You could on the goods and all of that stuff, just like you could now. That has nothing to do with Amendment 5. That's just the way it works right now. But the sales tax on services is only allowed for a revenue neutral proposal to eliminate the income tax. And you only have 5 years to do it.
Yeah. So I got a question on Amendment 5. It's going to look at just getting rid of the income tax. But come January 1, income tax is still going to be there. It's over a 5-year period, right? Still going to be there. So now I'm going to pay income tax plus 5 to 7% on my carpenter or dentist.
No, those they get phased in together because otherwise we wouldn't be revenue neutral. If we put all the services taxes in right away before the income tax cuts came, we would be in violation of the constitutional language from Amendment 5 because we would be increasing the revenue on there, and we wouldn't be allowed to do that. They have to go. They have to be phased in together along the way.
So if one goes up, the other goes down.
Right. Every dollar, if a dollar comes in from, say, they start taxing lawyers, for example. Lawyers are going to start paying a sales tax. Every dollar that comes in from lawyers remitting their sales tax to the state of Missouri, every dollar that comes in from there, you have to return at least $1. You can return more than $1, but you have to return at least $1 in income tax cuts to the taxpayers. Yes.
So if Amendment 5 passes next week, how does it work? You get the decrease in the income tax for year 2026, 2027?
Yeah, so the legislature then would be required, mandated, to put a revenue schedule in place of how it's going to go down.
And that would require another MOLEC session to agree on all of that.
Mhm.
So actually it would have to be maybe 2028 or something, because next session wouldn't be until.
I think it's, I don't know, this would be up to the governor, so I don't know what happens. I think it's likely you could make the governor call a special and you could do it in September at the veto session and put it in for 27, because Amendment 5 would go into effect before it could go into effect before the end of the year, which means we would be authorized to do it.
I'm just trying to say, I know we're not going to change anything by passing it, but I'm saying, let's say it passes, the next opportunity that the MOLEC has to agree to something, what goes first? Income tax they say, hey, for the next year, income tax goes down by this much, and then we're going to, at the same year, impose a slight increase, or just a
So the
Actual
only one that's,
tax, how does-
income tax goes first because that's the only one that's required to go.
Right.
It's a shall versus a may. You all, ladies, you know the 10 Commandments. You know what shall means and you know what may means.
Right.
Shall means you have to. May means you can. You don't have to.
So income tax goes down.
Income tax is a shall. That has to go. The service
If
expanded base
If the
is a
consumption
may.
tax meets that, then it can replace it.
Yeah, the consumption tax is just being used to bolster the revenue to make the income tax cuts go faster. Because if you don't have the revenue coming in replacing the backfill,
Right.
you're
It
required.
doesn't make
You only have two ways to realize you have to cut the budget, and we just can't cut that fast, or you need economic growth. And we would get economic growth, but again, 20, 25, 30 years
Right.
before you actually get to zero. Now it would happen. You'd get the initial cuts probably pretty quickly because the growth would be front loaded once we're at zero, and also there's diminishing returns. You know, it's harder to get the last percent
Right.
than it is to get the first percent.
But we only have to get down to 1.5.
Yeah, you get down to 1.4 and then
Oh, it's 1.4?
I think it's 1.4%, and then you
Yeah,
just get rid of
then
it
it's
because
just
and you're
massive.
eliminating a big chunk of the DOR.
And then it can't ever be
Yeah.
put back in.
Yep. And once it goes to zero, it's required that it stays at zero permanently, and it would require another constitutional change to undo that. Just like we can undo any
Right.
constitutional change. Yes.
So you mentioned that when the state starts getting more money to the cities and the counties can lower their personal property tax. But right now, certain things are funded off of personal property tax that are not funded off of sales tax. So, like if you start taking away that money from personal property and so like the fire department.
Yeah. So if you don't levy a sales tax, for example, school districts aren't allowed to they don't levy sales taxes.
Right.
Then they're not getting the expanded base, which means they remain totally unaffected by the Amendment 5 language one way or the other.
But if the personal property taxes are lowered, then they are affected because their
No,
tax rate
it's
goes down.
only that local government, their portion of the personal property tax. In fact, it actually specifically references this in Amendment 5. There's a line in there
Okay.
about political subdivisions are not allowed to like go after it says not allowed to lower the public school district's revenue. It's because they have
But
to.
is it only the public school district or is it everything? Because we're talking the fire department and, well, the ambulance service just changed their tax base so they get sales tax instead of personal
It's
property.
the ones that lower are the ones that get the base because they have to remain at their current revenue levels. If you
Okay.
aren't collecting a sales tax, you can't remain at that current revenue level with the expanded base because you're not the one reaping the benefit of it, right? Then also the one some fire departments were recently in legislation in the last couple of years authorized to collect sales taxes. Very few it's brand new, so very few are actually doing it right now, and it's a very small part. You're right, most of it is funded by real property and personal property taxes. I can't say fire departments are. Some are. There are a few of them that are already levying sales tax, but it would be very small. It would only be in relation to the portion of the sales tax fund they receive. That would be the fact of this. Yeah, counties can't lower another government's personal property taxes in order to and then take the revenue themselves because they're the ones levying the sales tax. Good question.
I guess my question would be basically, what's in it for me? And I appreciate you're talking, but I'll need you to talk slower because I listen
Sorry.
slower. That's all right. But I'm looking to retire in the next few years, but I will still want to go and get my hair highlighted. I'll still need to get my oil changed. Hopefully I won't need attorney services, but I might. So what's in it for me? What would I be looking at in the next part of my life if this passes?
You get to codify to the extent you get Social Security, and I don't know if you do, but if you're going to be collecting Social Security.
Well, someday, but not
Yeah,
yet.
well, when you're collecting it, you would constitutionally codify your 0% rate. You would I don't know if you get a public pension or will get a public pension. You would codify that. If you're getting a private pension, you will continue paying income tax on that as long as there's an income tax. If you have a 401k, you will continue paying income tax.
So I
as
still
long as
gotta pay taxes.
There's income tax. So yeah, even when you retire, you're going to have an income tax burden if that's how you're making your money. Because you're still making money off of sources that aren't. And to the extent you are, you're constitutionally codifying. and you want to get your hair highlighted, colored, maybe. Again, maybe. It's not, Amendment 5 doesn't automatically put a tax on hairstylists or hair coloring services. It could. It authorizes the ability to do that. We don't have that ability right now. But what is happening right now is your hairdresser, your hairstylist is turning around and paying 4.7% of their income to the state of Missouri because they're earning a paycheck through their prices that they charge you. So, what else is in it for you? We talked about the privacy concerns of tax return. Right. We talked about the double taxation and choosing your own tax burden. You don't have a choice on what your 401k is going to do. You don't have a choice on what your public pension is going to pay you out. You do have a choice on whether you get your hair colored once every 2 weeks or once every month.
Three.
And also your kids too. It allows them for your kids not to have that burden over their head.
Wouldn't the services reduce the city's revenue because people are cutting back? They rely on sales tax. How do they make up the difference?
No, the cities, if they got the services, they would be getting taxes on things they're not currently getting taxes on.
The city gets the services?
Cities largely charge, cities charge sales taxes. So they would be getting that expanded
What about
base.
service? About having your restaurant, full service, they're gonna charge extra. How does the city benefit with the service charge added?
With the service, with the sales tax now being applied to services?
Yes.
Because they're not getting tax revenue off of those things either, because they're missing, they're only pretty much getting sales taxes, which means that's just a non-taxable event for them. Someone goes to a hairdresser in the city of Ozark, Missouri, or someone gets their hair colored in the city of Ozark, Missouri, that is a completely untaxable event for the city of Ozark, Missouri, because that hairdresser is not paying sales taxes. They're exempted under Section 26. The city is not allowed to charge an income tax like the state of Missouri is. They'll get their property taxes off of the hairdresser, but that doesn't matter whether a customer goes there and whether there's an actual card swipe or transaction happens. That's just already baked into the cake. So that when a customer goes and gets a service from someone in that city, right now, as it sits, that is a completely untaxable, it's just lost revenue potential for the city.
So the concern I hear is if the downturn happens and people cut back, how does the city make up the difference for that?
Income tax, well, first off, income taxes are actually a lot more vulnerable to economic fluctuations than consumption taxes are. Spending remains more level. I mean, there are things you have to spend on versus you get laid off, you qualify for different exemptions. There's a lot more chaos in the income tax system than the consumption tax system. The fluctuations in that. So one, they actually there's a little bit more predictability that goes to that, but they're already subject to that. Cities right now are already living off of predominantly sales tax. So the extent this idea that okay, well they're going to be fluctuating based on what's being sold in there, like it actually makes it better because they're spreading it out over more of their economy. If a city's only place really selling a lot of goods is a Walmart, they are completely dependent on that Walmart selling goods. There may be lawyers, there may be hairdressers, there may be people cutting lawns, there may be an accountant in that city. They're not getting tax revenue. They're completely dependent on the person selling goods, like Walmart, for their tax revenue. This is spreading it out to more of their economy, which actually makes it more stable. To the extent sales taxes, consumption taxes are vulnerable to different trends, that's already a problem for cities. They're already largely sales tax based. Jamie, I haven't gotten one from you.
No, and I know we've got people that have. There is a commercial out right now that I know is confusing a lot of folks. It's obviously from somebody who is on the other side of the aisle, and they're talking about things that will be taxed. They're talking about rent. We're talking prescriptions, things of that. These are medical. These are housing that are things that are exempt. But how far do those three exemptions that you talked about? How far do those stretch?
Rent is a federal, that's one of those things the federal government says we can't.
Right.
So you won't get taxes on rent because if Amendment 5 passes.
Right. So how far do those three go? Do prescriptions, do things like that? How far do those three exemptions stretch? Housing, medical
So
and.
the medical one is the most limited because the federal government protections for sales taxes on medical services is limited to federal medical spending in conjunction with the federal program, Medicare, Medicaid. To the extent there's other smaller, veterans and other smaller programs that stuff is sales tax exempt. That makes up and so like but like if you are on a private health care plan that's not administered through the federal government, if you are paying out of pocket for a medical like you go to the chiropractor, $100, that does not have a federal protection. But that is a very small minority of medical spending. Mike Keogh said he will not sign a bill, that he would veto any bill that did not contain an outright exemption for healthcare services. It's again, half of that is already exempt. So you're already not going to collect as much as you think you would off of a sales tax and services. I tend to believe that this is one of the few industries, and this is my opinion, right? Like, I think the governor's correct in having that opinion because I think to the extent the other half of it that we could potentially put a tax on, I don't think we should, because a lot of that money is not really real spending. It's insurance adjustments, and it's like the amount of spending that's actually happening is like the copay. I think the amount of money you would get off of taxing healthcare services is essentially, okay, you can charge 5%, put a 5% surcharge on the $20 copay when someone goes to the doctor. It's not worth doing, and it's not worth the paperwork it creates. I think taxing medical services, while we look at it and we think, oh, that's a huge economic activity, it's a lot of it is illusory because it's based on insurance payments and adjustments where no money's actually changing hands, and you're not actually going to be able to get the money. So when I say it's a real easy promise for the governor to make, like it's real easy to take that to say, yeah, I can trust that, because he's essentially like, you're not really giving up anything. It's very difficult to put sales taxes on healthcare services. One, because half of it is illegal to do anyway, even after Amendment 5. But then the other half is not actually like really well-defined economic activity.
One more then. I know the first part of this bill that was wrote, protections for public education. Can you speak to that? Because I know we've got people that are listening online, and people want to know about that.
Yeah, so Amendment 5 has a line in it that expressly says that the public education budget cannot be defunded, that we can't do budget cuts to make up the revenue, to the extent that revenue has to be changed to create revenue neutrality somewhere. You can't go after public education budgets.
Thank you.
Did you say you're out of time?
I did not.
Oh, I thought somebody said.
Nope.
Oh, go ahead.
What about insurance? Is that considered a service? They're gonna tax it?
Yeah, if it's not falling under a business services input, insurance could be a service. And again, that's not an automatic. That just means they don't get a constitutionally protected loophole. We could not. It would be up for debate like other stuff.
Okay, like if you don't have enough money, you're going to raise whatever you need to get enough money, correct? Or you're not going to make the exemptions to some. And in your speech earlier, you said if the bill passes, you guys will go to legislation and you start deciding how you're going to do the bill, and you can make some exempt. You know what? I haven't been able to trust a politician in 60 years because they never do what they say they're going to do, and they always do it for the rich. So when you guys are up there in legislation, you going to help us poor folk, or are you going to help the rich?
I'll say right now, I don't even have the choice to help you because the rich already have their tax loopholes protected.
Well, no, but you protect more of them. If you're up there in legislation, you can break some of it.
I can't.
Don't smile at me.
I can't.
You know what
I
I'm
can't
talking
because
about.
if they've gotten it in the Constitution, like, and this is a known thing that happens. Look at all the gambling initiative, the marijuana initiative. They all set up tax deductions in the constitutional framework because they know people will demand their politicians to go after this. We can't do it if it's in the Constitution.
But who's been in charge in Missouri for the last 25 years? The Democrats or the Republicans?
The Constitution stops anyone from acting
That's
if
not
it's
what I
done through
asked.
initiative.
Why is things such a mess? Who's been in charge the last 25 years in the state of Missouri?
Those things you just mentioned came from initiative petition.
That's not Republican. Those weren't Republican proposals. Those were done through lobbyists and special interest groups, paying people to go out and collect signatures outside mailboxes, outside polling places, outside of Walmarts, getting people to sign it, running it to the ballot, lying to you in the 50 words about what it does, running misleading campaigns, and then getting Missourians to vote for their special interest bundled packages. That didn't come through the legislature. And Section 26 is one of those. Section 26 was done, it's in the Constitution. It came through the voters. It's not politicians who do a lot of this.
That's from the realtors.
I know, but I've never seen Jefferson City do much for the poor people.
Yeah, well, and I'm not here to stand up for the politician. I think my record, and you're probably not familiar with my record, but I think my record speaks for itself on how I've approached Jeff City and the things I've complained about and done. But I'm telling you, if you don't trust the politicians, then let's put in some accountability metrics that force them to be revenue neutral, that force them to start going after the income tax, that allow them to actually stop taxing. I'm confused by this idea that's like, well, why don't you just go after the special interests? First, prove to me that you are going to do the right thing by doing it. I can't do it. I need you to pass Amendment 5 because the Constitution blocks me from going after these things. The special interests are smart, and they have a lot of money, and they hire lobbyists, and they hire these groups, and they run these fancy campaign ads to put things on ballots. And they get protections that politicians can't touch.
I know, but it's everything. Even when they say, you know, we're going to raise the utilities 2% this year, 4% next year, 7% next year, then all at once there's a windfall. Oh hell, we got to raise it to 14%. We got to raise it to 8%. When they, you know, said they weren't going to do that, you can't trust anything the politicians tell you.
Did we raise utility taxes?
Oh, I'm just saying.
Okay,
I was in Springfield, and that's what they done.
I don't think we've raised a utility tax rate. Not in the time I've been there.
We got trouble with the power plant, you know, so we got to raise it. You know, I've never seen anything go down or anything help me. I keep paying more, and I bet you everyone in here can probably say the same thing.
So do you like the status quo?
I don't know.
If this is the part where we have to make a choice. Amendment 5 is absolutely not the status quo. It is a deviation. And if you don't like what's been happening so far in Missouri, if you don't like the fact that the rich leverage the income tax code while poor folk and middle class folk can't because they don't get access to the same credits, that's absolutely true. That's happening. We get rid of it. We get rid of all that special preferential treatment too.
I do go to Florida. Everyone wants cash. What do you think they want cash for? Everybody wants cash. They don't want a credit card. They don't want a check. They don't want nothing. Every place you go, they want cash. I wonder why. Duh. Duh.
Sure.
What do you think?
I'm trying.
Why did they want cash?
It's less reportable. It's more fungible. It's easier to transfer. There's a lot of reasons to want cash, but I'm wondering
Well,
what
they're not paying the
I'm
tax
missing.
on that,
I
are
understand what you're saying about the cash. What I'm missing is the connection to Amendment 5. I just want to make sure I'm answering the
You know
question.
what?
And I missed that
tried to
part.
read it. To me, you'll maybe, they're hard to understand. They're hard for someone, unless you're an attorney, you understand them bills. Really understand them. You know? And, you know, I've never missed an election in my life. And they write the bills where they're very, very hard to understand, you know? And usually there's reverse negatives in them. You think you're voting for something and you're not, you know? And just either yes or no, you know, most of the time. But, you know, I haven't been able to trust politicians because they usually don't do what they say they're going to do.
If I
Put
can
the
add
guardrails and accountability metrics on us in the Constitution.
If I can add to that real quick, if you'll go to the bill, because I'm like you, I don't understand legalese, I don't understand jargon. Like I said before, I make sawdust for a living. I'm a woodworker, and so you know I serve with Ben, and that's why I've asked Ben to come because he can explain it in a way that I can't. If you're reading the bill and you're on the House website, there's a button right underneath the bill language. Summary, it breaks it down into common everyday language. I usually read it first. That way when I do read the legalese, it makes more sense. Yeah. And so that is an option that you can read that. It does break it down into more common language. basically like the Cliff's Notes a little bit, so that it does help when you do read the language again.
I was just gonna say, you know, to your point, just say that you're gonna go give your lawnmower, somebody who mows your lawn. Here's $50, take care of my lawn, do that. Okay, I'm gonna pay you in cash. Okay, you want cash because you don't wanna report that. Okay, that's fine. That circumvents the state income tax system. But what does that lawnmower do with that money? I go and I pay for gas. I go and I buy clothes. I go and I buy, maybe I go get a haircut. Maybe not me personally, but somebody with hair might go get a haircut. So when they're doing that, when they go out and they take your money, they're might be circumventing the income tax system, but they are paying for stuff. And so when they pay for stuff, they're gonna pay the state sales tax, which is gonna fund the government, which they're circumventing here now.
It could be like the lady getting her hair fixed.
I mean, is that correct?
They may be taxing the hair person, they may tax the lawn mowing person too, but if he's getting cash, he ain't having to pay any of that tax like everybody else.
Sure they are,
does.
because they're having to pay their state income tax burden, which is embedded into the price.
It's what your argument is, like, Amendment 5 is not the bill to fix all tax evasion in Missouri. It's a different problem.
Yeah, and
there are a lot of problems in our state. And I want to clarify because it's let's be like, Amendment 5 is a specific kind of bill. It's, are we going to eliminate the income tax? And we do that by having revenue points that if we realize this revenue, we are required then to return it in tax cuts to people. The question that remains to be answered on it is, how are we going to do it? There are 3 levers we can pull in Amendment 5 that dictate. You can try to find taxes elsewhere, which is what a lot of this conversation has been, but that's not the only lever.
But there's a burden on everybody when you find it elsewhere.
And just like the income tax is a burden right now. And I've talked about how the income tax is a burden that comes with double taxation, a lack of control of your tax burden, hidden taxation, embedded taxation, and it stifles economic growth and new opportunities that could be coming to Missouri. Consumption taxes don't operate.
I didn't want to go off, on the cash deal, but
okay.
My question is if you're not getting enough money and you're short, you guys are going to keep finding money. You're going to put more taxes on either the hair people or someone.
No, that's what I'm saying. The 3 levers. The 3 levers. I'm responding. It's like, no. There's again, like, at the end of the day, I have to. Jamie has to. We have to go around and we have to justify our existence to you every 2 years. The people who are voting on this and who will make these decisions are accountable to you. The bureaucrats aren't accountable to you. Bureaucrats are against Amendment 5. I wonder why. The special interests and the lobbyists, a lot of them are against Amendment 5. They're not accountable to you. I am. When I make a decision, my constituents can choose every other year whether they send me back or kick me out. Which means there are real constraints on on the politicians here that say, like, if I want to choose to do this, there are other levers we can pull. We don't have to just go find the revenue elsewhere. We give less of a tax cut, less of an income tax cut, and it just takes longer to get there. We spread out the amount of time we're going to. One of the options is we can tax this service, we could tax that service. We could raise the rate to this and not tax this service. But a choice that is, and the status quo choice, without a politician actively acting on the other side of Amendment 5, the default choice is it's just going to take longer. I started this off by saying this, and it's worth repeating. If Amendment 5 passes, the only guarantee that we know for sure is happening is that the income tax rate is going to 0. That's what you're voting on, to put the income tax rate at 0. The question then, all this other stuff is all just accessory debates on how long should it take. Should we spend 30 years doing it, or should we spend 5 years doing it, or something in between? And all of that is on the table, and that is a matter of political discourse. I think that should be a political discussion. We shouldn't just have automatic loopholes for certain industries in our Constitution. But that's just me.
But there's going to be an exception to people who you still want to exempt.
I mean, if you ask me, my view of it. Yeah, exactly. The same special interest groups.
The same, yes.
And so think about what you're saying. And I've actually had this question phrased like this at just about every town hall I've been. And I'm like, really? Like, think about what that is. It's saying, I don't want to vote, like, I'm worried about voting for Amendment 5 because I don't want the politicians to pick and choose which services get taxed and which ones won't. Right now, they are all tax exempt. They are all winning. Like, it is better for us to pick, it is better for us to be able to expand some type of this base and treat more of the economy fairly than it is to just say, well, I don't think it's going to be done the way I want it to be, so I just want all of them to have their tax exemption, all the special interests.
Everybody should be treated equally.
I agree.
Just like we should get what the
I agree.
senators and congressmen get.
And I agree entirely, and I think that, to me, that's a tenet of limited government, is that fair government doesn't pick winners and losers. Fair government treats everyone the same under the tax code. And right now, we are falling horrifically short of that standard in Missouri, because we are giving 70% of our economic activity a massive tax break. We're not saying we're taxing them at less than what we're taxing mom and pop brick and mortar stores. We're taxing them at 0%. And I'm one of the people, I'm a lawyer, I'm one of the people who's realizing that, and I'm standing in front of you saying, I think it's wrong. I don't think it's fair that my business doesn't pay sales tax and, you know, a brick and mortar store selling toys to children does have to pay sales tax. I think we should be treated equally. I agree with you 100% on that.
I also wanted to say the special interest groups, they don't hover and ask us questions of what we want. They talk to the people at the Capitol, because the income tax is something that is decided up in Jeff City because it's an easy number. They can tweak, they can put in stipulations to avoid and all that stuff. And they only have to talk to that smaller campus of people, and they don't have to then get re-voted in. And so by us saying, well, I got some digits for you, and going to consumption, there's nothing that they can then do. It actually then hams them up to where they can't do all the fun they've been doing, and so it centralizes it. But then also, DOR no longer has to babysit and monitor what all of us Missourians are doing. They only have to focus in on the businesses that we have to collect those monies, not being like, well, is he scamming on us or something like that. So it reduced the DOR, in my understanding.
Cliff notes on that is, yeah, the administrative costs, if we talk about wanting government efficiency and reducing our budget, the administrative costs for administering a sales tax are significantly less than what it takes to administer the income tax. We're not auditing people's entire paychecks and things anymore. It all just gets collected at the point of sale, remitted to the DOR, and then turned out to where it came from at the schedule it's supposed to. It takes significantly less bureaucrats, significantly less government workers, and a lot less paperwork. It is cheaper to administer, which means it is cheaper to run our government and more efficient to run our government.
So what's the percentage of that right now? If you reduce it half, how much savings would be administered or eliminated?
The governor's office number, and I don't know where they got it. I just go off there. They think up to maybe 1.4% of that income tax rate is responsible for just the DOR like administration of itself. I think that might be high. I don't know how they got to that number.
Where were those people job-wise?
Working all the new private sector jobs that are coming to Missouri. We don't want people on the government's paycheck. We want people in the private sector earning their paychecks out there. Let's put them in the real world. Sir.
Just real quick, there were two amendments, I believe, that passed last time: the gambling and the marijuana.
Marijuana was 2022. Gambling, sports gambling is 24.
Yeah. Thank you. So,
yeah.
Two-part question: how popular in reality were those amendments? Because I was against them. And how much revenue did they actually generate? Well, why can't we just jack the hell out of those rates?
Because they're constitutionally prescribed. You can't change the rate. And not only are they constitutionally prescribed, they are slated to go to a specific place. So when I talked about, when I said, well, we need to fund prisons, we need to fund education. We have to fund those things. Well, the sports wagering, it's not actually bringing in all the money they promised, but that is earmarked for education. Marijuana, it's earmarked for justice system, for doing expungements, paying judges. That's what that money is going to. And no elected official, no one who's accountable to you, the voter, gets to decide how that money is spent. By the way,
I was just curious. I do appreciate. Look, I didn't mean. I hope I didn't come off as combative, because that wasn't my intent.
No, you're good. I asked for, I said all the questions.
No, I start to,
What about the lottery money?
It's slated for education for schools.
Is there a certain
Only if
percentage
it's in
that,
that county.
is that a
County
percentage?
controls.
I mean, it's the vast majority, I think, of the lotto money goes. Some goes to the administration of it and the program. I don't think it's quite all of it that gets to go back in education, but that's the predominant source that it goes to.
Administrative, schools, and then there's a piece that goes somewhere else.
Yeah, but none of it, it doesn't go to general revenue for it to be divvied out between us. We are largely very much dependent on the income tax rate now for the general revenue.
And gambling had a very big shortfall this year as well.
Yeah, so what you do is, and again, like you get to choose Amendment 4 too. The initiative petition process, how it's working right now, is these special interests, like someone has to pay money to signature gatherers to get these things proposed on the ballot. It doesn't just happen. You don't get 5% of people in Missouri to sign a petition by simply, having one or two people stand out who really believe in the cause. That's why you don't see conservative stuff. Quite frankly, you don't even, you only see the stuff that has someone who's willing to drop a lot of money into the signature gathering process. Well, if I'm DraftKings and FanDuel, if I'm the St. Louis Cardinals and I really want sports wagering and I'm going to spend money, I have to spend my money to get those signature gatherers. I have to spend money to convince the voters to go vote for it on the campaign. If I'm spending all that money, I'm going to make sure there's something in it for me. What did they do to make sure in that there's something in for them? They fixed their tax rate so it can never be moved up on them, absent a constitutional amendment. And then they put all their deductions in there. The sports wagering amendment, you probably know this. You said you heard. No, this might have been one of
the hard no on that, it's still passed.
They get to deduct their promotional and marketing costs.
Yeah, see, that's
which
the
means
whole-
if you're FanDuel or
that's the
DraftKings,
whole-
you get to choose every single, every time it comes time to remit taxes, and you have a $500,000 tax bill for that cycle. Well, you can pay it to the state of Missouri, or you can put it into a deduction and use it for promotional and give $500,000 of free bets to people and do marketing. If you own a business, would you rather pay taxes or use that money to advertise or give kickbacks to your customers? And if you're looking and wondering, why do we have a shortfall? Why don't all these initiative petition that the special interests lead, they promise all this money, why is it always short? It's because in the fine print, somehow it never makes its way into the ballot summary, that stuff. It's always, in the case of marijuana, it's on page 41. The marijuana amendment from 2022, just that amendment alone is longer than the entire U.S. Constitution. That one amendment, 42 pages, is way long. It's not even close. The U.S. Constitution is like a few pages. The Missouri Constitution is like this now. It's like a book. And it's because we keep adding. You see 50-word ballot summaries when you go vote. And those 50 words of ballot summary that you see are backed up by 40 and 30-page constitutional amendments that are filled with things that can never be adjusted when they don't work, like tax rates, licensing, like how we regulate that thing, how, like if it's gambling, if it's casinos, if it's marijuana, a lot of ways we're hand-tied on a lot of the regulatory stuff we can do, and we can't adapt to changing circumstances because it requires a constitutional amendment, which means the only way is to go back to the voters to do it. And who's going to fund that campaign? It won't be the people who paid to put that provision in there. That's a little bit of a sidetrack tangent. I mean, it relates to Amendment 5 because what we're addressing in Section 26 came through that process. It was paid for by the realtors to get Section 26 in because they wanted to be exempted from sales taxes. And there are other groups that benefited from it too who were able to put in. But Amendment 4 is also on the Constitution, and it goes directly to addressing that problem. Increase the standard that the initiative petition has to amend our Constitution. It cannot be easier to amend our Constitution than it is to pass a law through the legislature. A statute is not a constitutional provision. The Constitution is the foundation of our government. It is supposed to be the guardrails. It's supposed to say what government is allowed to do, what they're not allowed to do. And when we start putting specific tax code policy, when we start giving kickbacks to special interests and hardwiring them into the Constitution, it means our Constitution is for sale. The only way we fix that is by increasing the threshold to make sure we actually have true consensus among Missourians before we just allow people to buy with a simple majority vote through the initiative petition process.
Let me get back to the taxes.
Yeah.
But, would each and every service have the exact same sales tax rate, or would certain services have higher tax rates?
Yeah, so right now, the way it works, and that this would deviate, we set a single state sales tax rate in Missouri. And then what we've done over time through the Constitution, some of it through statute, we've given exemption to this. So we just say, well, the sales, everything is taxed at 4.225%. But we're going to choose not to tax this one specific item or this one specific service. And so it just gets a straight exemption. That rate has to stay the same for everything across the board. The question is whether we're going to address any of it. Just like it does now, the question becomes how many of these exemptions can we start addressing and tackling?
But you don't have a rate set, so you want people to pass it before you say this is what the rate's gonna be.
I've told you
can
what.
make it
Yeah, I mean,
high
I've told you. I've told you what the rate would be about. I said 4.9% is where you're going to end up.
Where you're gonna
Now that
start.
4.9%, I talked about the levers. There's 3 levers we can pull, and that rate, if I'm telling you, 4.9% is the number if we treat everyone equally. If we say all economic activity in Missouri outside of what the federal government says we can't do anything about, everything we can do something about, we treat equally. We don't pick winners and losers. We just say this is the rate. Your rate is 4.9%. Well, you might come to me and say, well, you know, and it's just fine. It's not just special interest coming. It's you know, young families are going to come to their state legislators and say, Jamie, I don't think you should tax daycare services. You know, people are going to say, I don't think you should tax this kind of specific healthcare service. I don't think you should tax hairstylists for something. Like, there will be something. For every time we give one of those exemptions and we treat someone differently, that rate's going to go up a little bit. Or the third lever, we're going to have to say we can keep the rate there, but it's going to take longer for us to hit our revenue targets. So you can pull the lever on the exemptions and say we're going to treat everyone the same, and I'm telling you, if you do that, your rate is 4.9%. You can say, well, we want to keep the rate of 4.9%, but we want to give a few exemptions here and there to specific industries. Well, then you have to take longer. It won't happen in 5 years. It'll happen in 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, depending on how many exemptions you get. Or you can say, no, we want it in 5 years, we want it in 6 years, and we want all these exemptions. Well, then the only other option is the rate has to go higher than 4.9%. I don't think we should go higher. I'll tell you, we absolutely can't go past 1 point. We don't want to have a higher sales tax rate than Tennessee, or a higher sales tax rate than Arkansas, or a higher sales tax rate than
Shouldn't all that be
Kansas.
decided before we vote on it?
Here's
Can't talk about it.
we can't do it statutorily right now. And yeah, we could sit there and we could say, you know what, let's look at exactly what these tax rates look like. We'd be guilty of the thing I just talked about with the special interests have been doing. We should not be doing specific sales tax rates in our Constitution. That is not the place, that is not an appropriate place. As conservatives, we should believe in the sanctity of our foundational documents. We should believe they should be guardrails, they should be accountability metrics on government. We shouldn't be passing policy measures in our Constitution. I understand the need to say, I want to know exactly what that tax rate is going to be. I want to know exactly how long it's going to take. I want to do that. That's fine. Like, and you will know, and that will have to come, and your elected officials are going to have to make transparent votes through the typical transparent political process to decide all that. But we need to get away as Missourians from thinking it's appropriate to shove specific tax rates and regulatory schemes in our Constitution. That's not what a Constitution's for. If we do that, we're doing the same thing that created this problem in the first place, because we won't be able to go back and ever adjust the rate. We won't be able to go back and adjust the exemptions if we start doing that right now in Amendment 5 itself. We are going to be stuck with the framework. Maybe right now it's appropriate to give exemptions to daycare services. Maybe it's we need to do that to encourage this. That doesn't mean it'll be appropriate to do that in 10 years. Well, if you put that in Amendment 5 because you want it in right now, in 10 years we're stuck with it. No matter what no matter what the plight of daycare services is in Missouri. We need to, as conservatives, we should be resisting the urge to put all the fine details and fine print in the Constitution. It's not what a Constitution is for. What the Constitution for is for guardrails and accountability. It's saying, what are the limits of acceptability for powers for our politicians to have? what are the things that they're allowed to do, what are they not allowed to do, and then let's have the political process play out and make these decisions. And that's what Amendment 5 does. It says, you shall be revenue neutral. You shall eliminate the income tax. When the income tax is eliminated, it shall remain at zero permanently. And you are never allowed to raise it again. Those are guardrails. That is stuff that is foundational to government that belongs in our Constitution. That is what a constitutional amendment should look like. And everything else is something we should be having open debates about. When any special interest group, any industry group, anyone that wants a sales tax exemption should absolutely have to stand in the Capitol, in the people's house, in front of everybody, on the record, and justify why they're entitled to be treated differently than any other industry. Yes, sir.
I brought up the daycare, but the daycare will also be paid for by income that's not taxed, right? I mean, assuming, you know, right now kids pay the daycare. I've got 2 of them that are paying for their daycare. The money they use to pay it is taxed at the 5% or whatever the rate is. So they won't be paying that. They can afford to pay a little bit of sales tax if that's.
Yeah, I mean, so
and everything. Will
yeah, this is a benefit I haven't talked about. Aaron Hedlund, he's the chief economic advisor in the White House. He's also a Missouri. His studies show that he is estimating, the White House Council of Economic Advisors have estimated that Missouri eliminating the income tax would result in, on average, a $3,000 raise across the average across wages for every Missouri. Now, $3,000, like a lot of that's easy to see. If we eliminate income tax, every Missourian earning a paycheck gets an automatic 4.7% raise, right off the bat once we go to zero, right? But that doesn't account for 3,000. Wages go up beyond that 4.7% because now that there's more workers in Missouri, now that there's more people willing to, right? We said if you tax them, you get less of it. If you stop taxing, you get more of it. You'll get more labor, more productivity, more workers in Missouri, more people. More companies coming into Missouri, chasing workers means they have to pay workers more to come in and convince them to do the job. You have more choices, which means the wages go up because you have more companies chasing those workers to work in their businesses. So $3,000, only some of that is for the 4.7% automatic raise. They go up way more than that. Helps you afford things like daycare.
I, for one, feel a lot better about it than I did when I walked in here. So.
Well, I appreciate that. Yes.
So I was wondering, like, I think comparing Missouri even to like Florida and Texas is kind of like apples and oranges because like Florida and Texas never went from doing state taxes to not doing state taxes. So what other state has gone from not doing state taxes to doing state or?
There's one that's Alaska. Alaska's the only one that had an income tax and got rid of the income tax. The other states that don't have an income tax, never had an income tax.
Okay.
To be sure, what Amendment 5 is something different than what states have done. However, there are a lot of states that have gone on to a path for zero recently, have taken note. I named some: Kentucky, Mississippi, Arkansas is going to do it. Sarah Huckabee Sanders has basically staked her entire political life and career on doing it. And there are other states and other places, South Carolina, there are other states that are aggressively moving, aggressively cutting, if they're not already on a path to zero. And like, for the states I've named, a lot of them are actually on the path. They've done this already, they've put themselves on the path. When I say Alaska's the only one, I mean they're the only ones who had income tax and have successfully gone all the way to zero. The other ones have done it recently, and they're on the path. They've enacted stuff like this. They just haven't made it to zero yet because it does take time to get there. I think if we were able to do it in 5 years, it would probably put Missouri as one of, if not the first of the states that haven't gone to zero yet to actually get to zero. Right now we're falling behind in the income tax rate, but we could quickly catch up on it. If we take 10, 15, 20 years, we'll be in the ballpark with those other states that are doing it. So the answer to your question is, Alaska is the only one who's at zero right now, but other states are on the path. They've done it. They're just in the middle of their process.
So was there, in the transfer process, was there more specificity in the bill itself of like what the benchmarks and like the certain like milestones were, or is it basically?
There will be. We don't have that bill. We can't. There's a significant legal question whether we can are even allowed to pass that bill and have it actually remain in effect prior to, because if we pass that bill now, we're passing a bill that is unconstitutional as it sits there. And then it is open to the court declaring it unconstitutional and striking it down on the spot right there. We have to come back and do it again.
So, for instance, in Mississippi, was it against their constitution to
No,
pass it?
oh yeah, oh sorry, I misunderstood your question. I thought you were asking specifically Missouri. No, every state's challenges are a little different. Not every state has a section 26 hardwired into their constitution like we do. A lot of those states aren't requiring, a lot of states have different levels of dependence on income tax. Like Mississippi is not as dependent on their income tax. Revenue replacement is a lot easier for them to do because they just don't realize as much revenue from their income tax as Missouri does. So it's every state's in a little bit different of a situation. Our constitutional loopholes and blocking of getting rid of those loopholes is a significant challenge we have. People ask, well, why don't you, again, the question, why don't you just do this? You can go to zero. Yeah, we could just go to zero. We would have no way to get rid of these loopholes to help fund it. So I don't know how we would pay for it, or even pay for half of it, or a third of it. But also, the other reason doing the Constitution is because one day, the politicians we all complain about that we know we shouldn't trust, that have proven themselves untrustworthy, will take over again, and one of the first things they'll do is go back to collecting the income tax. Putting it in the Constitution protects it in perpetuity. Yes.
Again, I listened slowly, but did I understand that if there wasn't that income tax, Missouri would grow and there would be more jobs and then there would be more competition for wages? Does that mean then that the minimum wage would be going up?
It's wages go up, which means they all go up, but they go up the right way. They don't go up through government mandating that they go up. The true minimum wage is zero. It will always be zero. A company will always have the option, if it becomes too expensive because government has artificially increased the price of labor, a company always has the option of not hiring a worker. Minimum wage is zero.
Well, again, I'm kind of slow with this, but I'm not understanding because in my mind, federal would be at that 7.25, the state of Missouri is at 15. But if there's such competition, well then Cox is going to have to start making it 18 or 20. And are they going to be then having to raise prices to be able to bring in? Because at McDonald's, I don't want to be paying $30 for a Big Mac as a retired person because there's too many.
Well, no, I mean the prices, that competition also keeps the prices lower. You don't get to charge more if you have more competitors moving into the state, more businesses. That stops you from being able to increase your prices
So
because you're chasing the customers too. You're not just chasing the workers.
That's what I was saying. Maybe I misunderstood because I thought you said that the pay would increase.
Yeah, but I mean, not artificially by government mandating the increases. I'm saying it naturally increases through free market principles. Through the free market, because the more companies are chasing labor, they have to naturally pay labor more in order to take the jobs. That's good. That's how you grow an economy. You don't grow an economy by saying, oh, government says minimum wage is now $700 an hour. Look, everybody's rich. No, everyone gets unemployed. The prices all skyrocket because you've artificially done it. When you create real wealth, when you say, no, we are going to deregulate the economy, we are going to lower the tax burden and spread it out in a more efficient way. When we do these things that actually grow the economy, we create real wealth. That means more money in the state of Missouri. That means more goods being produced, which lowers the cost of goods because there's more businesses making and selling those goods. That is real wealth, not artificial wealth like government tries to do by saying, oh, we're just going to pay everyone $1 million a year and now everybody's. That doesn't work. We know that doesn't work.
Did you say there were 12 million visitors to Missouri?
40 million.
40 million. So they're all, right now.
46 million.
There's 46 million paying our sales tax. Again, 3 million
if you are a tourist in Missouri and you buy a snow globe at a souvenir store, you'll pay sales tax on it. It's a good. It's a tangible item. It's a good. So they're paying something. They're paying that stuff. But But tourists predominantly buy a lot of services. They buy things like tours. They buy things like Ubers and Lyfts. They pay for concierge services. They go to spas. These are all things that are not taxable, which means you buy more. Everyday Missourians who live here are purchasing more of the goods than compared to the amount of the service breakdown. What a tourist buy. Tourists buy predominantly more service-based things, which means they are not contributing into the sales tax portion of the economy in the same way Missourians are. And they're not contributing anything in the income tax part. By the way, one of the best ways I can illustrate to is if you have someone, especially with the online services industry, we have more services that are happening completely online. Think of something like all the AI services. Think of stuff like OnlyFans and those kind of things.
Let's not think.
There's a lift. If the person selling an online service is doing business with someone in Missouri, but they themselves are in another state, they're not paying income tax to Missouri because they're in the other state. They pay income tax there. And there is no sales tax or there's no internet use tax associated with the service, which means that right there is it's a person in Missouri purchasing it, but it is completely 100% an untaxable event by any government entity in Missouri.
If I can make it like it, we have more seats in Branson than Broadway, and not a single one of those seats is taxed.
And also, you would have to spend over $60,000 if it goes to 4.9. If it goes up to 4.9%, you'd have to spend over $61,000 to pay $3,000 in tax, which is roughly the estimated amount that you are paying in income tax, if I understand that.
Yeah, that's correct. The number I used was half of that because that I think is closer to the average amount. $1,500 is the average income is what the average Missourian pays in income taxes. That's $30,000 worth of purchasing power. You would have to spend more than $30,000 on services before you paid more under the broadened sales tax base than you do currently under the income tax base.
We'll do one more question because I know it's getting late, and Representative Keathley does have to drive back to St. Louis this evening, and he has a fairly new baby at home. Congratulations. One more question. So anybody have one more question for him?
I guess, yeah.
Go ahead.
So you're talking about the 4.9%. So for those of us who are like the middle to lower class, like how, when we're voting on this, then would we know it's not going to be like screwing us on the services that we do use? Like, I don't know how to ask this, I guess. Like, how do we know it wouldn't be more taxing going towards like the attorneys, the spas, or whatever, and it's not going to be like our insurance that we have to have.
Here's the question to ask yourself on it. Just assume it's going to be every service. At least every service you buy, okay? Assume it's going to be every service you buy. My next question for you is, think of all the services you buy. The lawn care workers, how often you get your hair cut, to the extent you have an accountant or attorney, if you get massages, if you use online services, like you pay for ChatGPT or Gragg, all the services you think about. Do you spend $30,000 a year on those things? And maybe that's right. That's assuming you're the average income tax. Look at your income tax. Look at what you paid last year in income tax, and then think of that number as 5%. So multiply that number out to get to whatever that number, whatever your income tax burden is, by 5%. That is how you can see, okay, am I going to be worse off or better? Look at how much you spend on services right now. Look at what your income tax burden is. Think of your income tax burden as your tax bill, and then extrapolate it out, multiply it out as 5% of that number. And that tells you, and if you spend that amount of money, more than that amount of money in services, then Amendment 5 is going to be a bad deal for you. I doubt there are very many people in Missouri who can say, my income tax bill is $3,000 and I spent $60,000 on services. I don't think the number's bad. You're spending $60,000 on services. You're making, well, like you have to, like, that's not your groceries, that's not your clothing, that's not the goods. That is just the services you buy. You're probably making well into six figures. If 60,000 of your income's going that, which means you're not a $3,000 taxpayer. There's probably, I'm not going to say no one, I'm sure there is some Missourian out there who has some weird system from year to year, an income. I don't know. I don't know everyone's situation. But for the vast majority of Missourians, if your income tax burden is $1,500, you don't have the capability of consuming $30,000 worth of services. If your income tax burden is $3,000, you don't have the financial capability of consuming $60,000 worth of services. The math just doesn't work out. But that's, if you want to know for sure, that's how you do that. That's how you do your own individual picture to see. And if there's some exemptions on things you buy, if you pay for daycare services, and we do an exemption on daycare, if you spend a ton of money, if you're not on a federally protected health care plan, and you like, and if we put a health care exemption in there, like that's just gravy that's adding on to the fact that you're going to come out ahead. Now you're coming out way ahead. But just start from a point, assume it's everything, and then do that calculation. I think you still come out way ahead. And how does that math work out at a macro level? It's because you're spreading that tax burden out to people who aren't currently paying into the system.
It's a 7-to-1 ratio.
So do we really want people from New York and California moving here and
No.
bringing their ideas with them?
I don't think that's
All right.
Depends which people.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Give my hand. Not an easy topic, not an easy one, a lot of moving parts. So thank you very much for coming out. I know it's a big move. It's a big topic. And thank you very much. I know it's a long ways from home. Thank you very much. He just happened to be in Springfield today working, so it was easy for me to nab him for today and all. So if you have any more questions, I think most of you know how to get a hold of me. If you don't, I will make sure that you have my contact before you leave here, and you can reach out to me via my email, my Facebook page, and we will make sure that you get answers to any questions you may have before you guys go to the ballot, whether you're voting early or if you're voting on Tuesday. So again, a lot of moving parts, a big item, and whether you vote yes or whether you vote no, make sure that you have the answers to your questions. So thank you very much for coming out tonight, and have a great evening.
So when you figure out how much you need,